How are we doing this morning after the Spirit has come and visited us today? Yes, He has. What we're going to be talking about today is something that every single one of us goes through in our life. We have mountaintop experiences and we have valley experiences. Everybody goes through them. Sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's nervousness, sometimes it's all kinds of financial things, and then all of a sudden God steps in and gives us a blessing, and we're stepping out of that valley and we're up on top. What we're going to be talking about is a person who went through a lot of troubles. And the first person who comes to mind when we think about lots of troubles is Job. We're not going to talk about Job, though. We're going to talk about Joseph. And it's not Joseph and Mary. It's Joseph, and I label it, as it says in the word, Joseph and the coat of many colors. We're going to go through what he went through. And what I want you to do is try to imagine in your mind that you are Joseph. And you're going to try to go through the things that he did. And you'll find this story in Genesis, starting the 37th chapter, starting with the first verse, and it goes on for at least 8 or 9 chapters. Jacob, who is the father, he has 12 sons. Now in the Bible it mentions mostly sons, but not daughters. So there's a bigger family than what is mentioned, just 12 sons. Joseph was hated by his brothers because Jacob loved Joseph the most. He didn't hide it. He showed his favoritism to Joseph all the time. So his brothers hated him. And Jacob made a coat, a special coat for Joseph. He calls it the coat of many colors. Now back then, most of all your garments were either white or gray. If they had some color in them, purple, red, orange, if they had color in them, you were in a higher society. You were listed as better than some of the other people because of your stature, because of what you wore. So Jacob made Joseph a coat of many colors, which what do you think the brothers now are thinking? They hate him even more, right? Hate, resentment. Now, Joseph has a dream, and he tells his brothers this dream. And in the dream, it comes across the idea that all his brothers are going to kneel down and give homage to him. Now, what do you think this does with his brothers? They hate him even more, right? And they even try to, in their mind, try to be able to see how they can get rid of this guy who's insulting them all the time. And Joseph has another dream. And this time it went further than just his brothers. It says the sun and the moon also bowed down and gave him homage. Now, Jacob heard this dream, and he says, I don't like what you're saying, but I'm going to remember what you said. He holds it in his heart. Now, all the brothers are feeding the sheep, but they had to go in another town, another city, to feed the sheep. And they've been gone for a while. So Jacob sends Joseph with food and drink for his brothers so that they can be able to keep doing what they're doing. And he gets on the trail and he's going, and he finally makes it to where they are. He had to go to another city because they had moved from there, and now they're going to a different city. And here he comes, and all the brothers see him coming, and they start planning how they can kill their brother, because he's such an aggravation to them all the time. And Jacob loves him more than any of them, so they're planning on how to be able to kill him. They see him coming, they go out and they grab him, they probably beat him up a little bit, they take his coat off, and they're going to start figuring out how they're going to kill him. But the oldest brother, Reuben, he says, we don't want the brother's blood on our hands, so let's throw him in a pit and figure out what we'll do with him tomorrow. And what he was planning was, during the night, he was going to let Joseph out of the pit and bring him to his father. But while he was in the pit, the brothers saw a caravan coming by. And that caravan was some slave traders. And they took him out of the pit and sold him to the slave traders for some pieces of silver. Now you can imagine your brother, no matter how mean or bad he is to you, that you're going to sell him and make him go into slavery. There was some big hatred there. Now the slave traders brought him to Egypt. And in Egypt, he was put up for sale as a slave. And a person bought him. His name was Potiphar. And he was an officer of Pharaoh's army. And he brought him to his home. And when he was in the home, he assigned him some duties that he was to do. And Potiphar's watching him. And he sees that everything he gave him to do, he did really well. And it says that the God that he's worshiping is actually blessing him and giving him all of the things that he did well. And it multiplied. So he gave him more stuff to do. And it says that he was a controller of all of Potiphar's things. His cattle, his house, even the things in the house he controlled. Who made the food, who got it ready, who served. He was put in charge. And he got to really like Joseph. Now, we got Potiphar's wife. Sees Joseph, nice, handsome, young man, getting in good power. And she says to herself, I like this young man. And she goes to Joseph and says, I want you to lie with me. And Joseph says, oh no, I can't do that. That would be going against my master and going against my God. I would never sin against my God. So what do you think she says? Oh, okay. No. She starts planning to be able to get Joseph whether he wants to or not. And with some time, when Potiphar is gone out doing his duties for the Pharaoh, she sends away all of the servants and everything out of the house. And Joseph has to go into the house to do his duties that he's supposed to do. And when he goes in, she grabs him and holds on to him and says, you will lie with me. And he said no, and he runs. Now when he runs, she still has a hold of his garment. He runs away half naked because in those days you have like a tunic, a blanket around you and it covers you up. And she had a hold of that, and when he runs, she still had it in her hands. Now she's upset. He's gone. When Potiphar gets home, she goes to him and says, this Hebrew who you brought into our house tried to rape me. And this is the garment that he had on as proof that he came in and did that. My screaming and yelling, he ran away. So Potiphar takes him and throws him in the prison, the Pharaoh's prison. And in the Bible it says the people who are in Pharaoh's prison are bound. They aren't just there in a cage. They're tied up. They're bound inside. Now, here he is in prison. We reached this little valley of our lives, right? He went from one valley of being hated into another valley of being sold, and now in another valley of being accused for something he didn't do. And now he's in prison, still in the valley. And he's in the prison guard, the keeper, gives everybody duties to do, and you got to do them or else you get punished, and all these different things that's in a prison. And he noticed everything he gave Joseph to do prospered, did well. People looked up to him. So he put him in charge. So you can see he's in prison, but he's still doing things to please others, and also he's in charge again. Now, while he's in prison and doing his duties, the Pharaoh sent the baker and the butler in prison because they upset him some way and they threw him in prison. And while they're in prison, Joseph is doing his serving thing of giving them food and stuff and taking care of them. And they said, I had a dream last night. And he says, well, tell me your dream. And he tells them the dream, and the dream was he interpreted the dream for him, and it says, in 3 days, this was the butler, in 3 days, you will be restored to being your butler at the Pharaoh's court, and you will be back with the Pharaoh again. Oh, he says, that's going to be great. That's going to be great. Now, the baker heard this nice interpretation of the dream because he had a dream also. And he says, I have a dream too. And he's excited. And he tells him the dream, and Joseph tells him, in 3 days, you will be hung. This was not such a good dream for him. And in 3 days, you will be hung. Now, Joseph tells the butler, says, when you go back to the Pharaoh, remember me that I'm in this place and see what you can do to get me out of here. So what do you think happens? It forgets him. The Bible says 2 years later, the Pharaoh has a dream. And in this dream, all of the wise men come to try to be able to figure out what the dream was and how to interpret it and all this, and they couldn't. That's when the butler remembered, oh, Joseph, when I was in prison, he interpreted my dream, and it came true. So I'm going to tell the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh says, go get this guy and bring him up here. And the Bible says they cleaned him up to make him presentable to be able to be in front of the Pharaoh and all of that. So you can see he's been in the valley, still in the prison, all dirty and everything. They brought him before the Pharaoh. And he says, I've heard that you can interpret dreams. Now, here's one of the things about Joseph. He says, God is the interpreter of dreams. He just tells it to me. So there's a communication, there's a relationship with God that Joseph has that tells him what the interpretations of the dreams are. So he gives God the glory. Pharaoh tells him the dream, and he interprets it and says, we're going to have 7 years in Egypt of plenty. The crops are going to be so many and all that stuff. It's going to be wonderful. But after that, 7 years of famine. And the famine years are going to be so bad they're going to make it look like the good years didn't even exist. And that Egypt will be brought down to nothing. And he goes, oh dear, what are we going to do? We don't want Egypt to fail. We got to find some way to be able to do this. And Joseph says, what you can do is, you can take the 7 years of plenty and store up a lot of that food and keep it and save it for when the famines come, you'll have food to be able to survive. And Egypt will still exist after. And he said, oh, we got to find somebody who can be able to do this, somebody honest and somebody good and forthright. And he says, I can't think of anybody else other than a person who God communicates with. And I want to put you in charge. Now Joseph becomes the number 2 man in Egypt. Now I think he's coming out of that valley, and now he's getting up on the mountaintop. Now the 7 years of plenty, they're doing it, and they're storing away, and he's doing all of the things he's supposed to be doing, and he's doing a good job. And the 7 years of famine start. And it's not just in Egypt. It's all over the place. All of the other surroundings areas. Jacob and his sons are starting to run out of food. So he sends his sons to Egypt. But he leaves Benjamin. Benjamin is another one that he liked almost as much as Joseph. He kept him. He goes, you go and you bring food, bring money to be able to pay for the rice and the food and everything that's being stored up so that we don't starve. Go get some. Okay, so they're gone. They go into Egypt. And as soon as they come up to start to be able to buy food and to get it and to put it into their sacks, Joseph is there watching. And he administers all of the stuff. And he sees them. And he recognizes them as being their brothers. But he doesn't let himself known to them. He made sure that they got their food, and he made sure that the money was paid. He took the money that they were given, and he gives it back to them and puts it in their sacks. And they go. Now they get almost back home again, and they start picking up the food to get some, and they see, the money is back in our sacks. What are we going to do? Oh, no. They're going to think we stole this stuff. And at first, he convinces them that he thinks that their spies have come to look out for Egypt, to see what they can do and take. And they're convincing him, no. So he says, well, the only way you're going to convince me is you said that there are 11 sons, and you only have 10 here. If you bring me, the next time you come for food, if you bring me that other person who you say is your brother, then I will know you're not a spy. So he does. Food is okay for a while, but then it starts to run down again, and they got to go down to Egypt again and get more food. Now Jacob is very resistant to letting Benjamin go. He doesn't want to lose this one like he had lost Joseph. Now, he sends some other presents with him, some honey and some dates and things to give to the keeper of the food, to give to them some presents. So they went, and they got there, and he told them that he was going to give them a party, kind of, because they did bring this other person, so they're proving he's not a spy. They're not spies. He says, bring them to my house. I want you to bring them to my house. And we're going to set up and we're going to eat. And we're going to have a meal. Because they are now proved that they aren't spies. And when they were there, he had set up the table from the oldest down to the youngest. And they're wondering, how in the world did he know where they were supposed to be seated? And the Benjamin got 3 times as much food as anybody else. They're trying to figure out what's going on here. And I think there was once where he separated himself and went in the other room and cried because he recognized all of his brothers. And they were afraid of him. His first dream came true, that they gave him homage. Now, they got their food and everything, and they got their what they came and bought with their money, and they started to go. And what Joseph did was he took his cup that he drank with on the table, and he put it into Benjamin's sack. And they started to leave and got a little ways away from Egypt a little bit, and he sent his army out to go get them and says, something terrible has happened. Somebody took our master's cup that he drinks out of. He goes, oh, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that. And they searched the things and found that it was in Benjamin's bag. So he brought everybody back, and they put him in front of Joseph. This is when Joseph revealed himself to them. Do you know the way the Egypt people look? They have a little thing on their head that covers their head, and they put eye makeup with the little black eyelash stuff, so that they didn't know who he was. But he revealed himself to them, and he forgave them. They were there to kill him. They wanted to kill him, to get rid of him. He was a pain in the neck to them guys. But yet, he forgave them. And what he told them was, he says, when you go back, I want you to bring your family and the whole family and your flocks and your sheep. Bring them to come in to stay here in Egypt with us. Now, this was only in the 2 years of the famine that had been going on, and there's still 5 more years to go. But he brought the whole family back to where there was plenty. Now, in that, we can see that Joseph went through 2 or 3 different things, but never came out of the valley. He was down inside the valley. Went from being sold as a slave, then to be a slave, and then to be thrown into prison. He was being blessed while he's in the valley. What we have a tendency to think is, when we're in the valley, oh no, woe is me. God's got to do something. He's got to help me. And then he starts to help, and we start to come out. He can bless you when you're at your lowest, when you're down there, if you're keeping him in your heart. God, where are you? My prayers aren't getting any higher than the ceiling. Where are you going? We're starting to doubt. Who knows what we're going to learn when we're in that valley? There are lots of lessons he gives us to do and things he puts us through to make us stronger, to make us to be able to get through harder times that might be coming. If we're staying faithful to him, he will surely make sure that he blesses us. Now, I had something this morning. I quick wrote them down. And for those people who study the Word and go into it deeply, know that Joseph's life, what he lived and went through, is like a mirror imaging gift of seeing the life of Christ before he even came. It's like 700-800 years earlier, Joseph, than Jesus. So he was showing us what Christ was going to be doing and saying and how he acts. And I wrote them down. And then I just wrote down, happened to be 12 of them. But there's probably more. Comparisons of Joseph and Jesus. Joseph hated by his brothers. Jesus was hated by the people and the Pharisees, his own people of his town. Jacob remembered Joseph's dream. Mary kept the words of the angels in her heart. The brothers thought how they might kill him. The Pharisees plotted how they might kill Jesus. Jacob sent Joseph to bring food and drink to his brothers. Jesus sends us to bring the good news to everyone. They sold Jesus to some slave traders for pieces of silver. Jesus was betrayed by Judas by some pieces of silver. Blood was put on Joseph's coat and torn up to hide the brothers' sin that they had done. Jesus' blood covers our sin and forgiveness. Potiphar's wife makes false accusations against Joseph. The Pharisees had false witnesses against Jesus. Potiphar and the prison keeper both put their trust and faith in Joseph, and their burdens were lifted. Putting your faith and trust in Jesus lifts your burdens. You feel like you've been set free. Joseph interprets the baker and the butler's dreams, but gives credit to God. Jesus gives his credit to God. Did you know that Jesus points to God? The Holy Spirit points to Jesus. None of them really say, "Hey, look at me." They're looking at somebody else. Shouldn't we be doing the same? Jesus said to the butler when he was going back to Pharaoh, "Remember me." Jesus says his disciples at the Last Supper, "Remember me." Joseph forgave his brothers. Jesus says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," on the cross. Joseph brought everyone to Egypt to live. Jesus goes to prepare a place for you. Now, I know there's more in there, but I stopped at 12. And you can see the comparison of Joseph and Jesus' life. We get an insight on Joseph's attitude towards God. Steadfast, never moved, always solidly looking to God all the time, even going through the lowest of the valleys. We should remember the same thing. God never leaves you nor forsake you. We have a feeling he does, but he doesn't. He's always there. We have to remember that when we're in the valleys. And they're coming. And the mountaintops, too, are coming. We remember the mountaintops. And sometimes the valleys make the mountaintops seem less because we're in them a lot. And we have a tendency to hang on to them. Oh no, woe is me. my bad times. But the good times is when you remember, like today, the way the Spirit was working. Makes everything go away. And we go out there, bring it with you. Bring it with you and tell others about it. Maybe it'll help them to get out of their valley. Now, on the last song that we usually sing, I said I was going to sing a song. And I looked